What if I told you a kid that dropped out of high school and broke a whole bunch of laws
He broke the law.
He was the devil himself until he broke the law.
would later build one of the most legendary hi-fi brands of all time? Would you believe me? I know. It sounds too crazy to be true, but it is true.
So it is true.
And the wildest part is, you probably already know the brand. But what you don't know is the story behind the brand. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's take a trip across the Atlantic and talk about a kid who grabbed a broom, raged against the machine, and seriously probably should have spent a whole bunch of time in prison.
I'm convinced he's guilty and he should be in jail.
Because he broke so many laws. But they were the right laws to break at the time. In 1968, Cambridge Audio was founded, born out of Cambridge consultants. Apparently, it was a British audio think tank.
It's a privately funded think tank.
I didn't know that was a thing. Anyway, they were based out of, you guessed it, Cambridge, England. And it wasn't started by a bunch of corporate suits. It was started by a bunch of young engineers who believed that audio components could be designed with scientific precision and also sound real good and be affordable. Their first product was the P40 integrated amplifier, and it made history because it was the first integrated amplifier to use a toroidal power transformer. And if you're anything like me, you enjoy a good toroidal power transformer.
I better see the amplifiers.
It's a little copper donut made out of copper that changed amplifier design forever. It reduced hum, increased efficiency, and made things sound way better. They worked in a modest workshop building tiny batches of gear, and every single one was tuned by ear and by hand. They weren't chasing profit margins, they were chasing their perception of perfect sound. But the Cambridge story doesn't really get interesting for about another 20 years. When a kid started sweeping the floor at Richer Sounds, not Richard's Sounds.
I'll sweep the floor, I'll scrub it, and I'll be on tea duty for the next 2.5 hours.
It was a pilot high stack it cheap hi-fi store in London. And that kid had no idea that the broom he was holding would eventually put him in charge of the company whose amps he was selling. So that kid sweeping the floors, James Johnson Flint, and he was the equivalent of a high school dropout.
Not bad for a high school dropout.
At 16, he has no degree, no real plans, but he loves hi-fi. And he goes and bugs Richard Sounds, and they make him their Saturday boy, which basically means he sweeps floors and takes out the garbage.
I'll sweep the floor, I'll scrub it, and I'll be on tea duty for the next 2.5 hours.
But more importantly, he really started to get to know hi-fi gear, and he learned how to sell it to people that were older than him. And the owner, Julian Richer, paid attention. And James just wasn't pushing boxes, he was watching. He was watching Julian Richer. He was watching how he managed the business, treated customers, bought products. And Julian Richer was watching James about how quickly he learned, about how he pushed boxes, and about his hustle. And so when Julian wanted to expand Richer Sounds, he asked James to do it. A kid, a high school dropout. So years later, in 1994, James and Julian formed a company called Audio Partnership, kind of on the nose. It was a design and manufacturing company created to build hi-fi, affordable hi-fi for normal people, not just golden-eared audiophile snobs. And their first big move? Well, they bought Cambridge Audio, or at least they bought the name Cambridge Audio. In 94, it had pretty much faded into obscurity, but before we get into the early years of the Cambridge Audio as we know it, we got to talk about how James was wired, or how James wired. No pun intended.
Normally, we'd locate a pirate radio within 15 minutes of broadcasting.
Pirate radio stations. Have you heard of pirate radio?
So this is my favorite part of the story. Okay, before streaming, before playlists, Britain had pirate radio. Because back in the day, the BBC, basically the government, was in charge of what music they allowed to be played on the radio. And in the 1960s, pop and rock were basically banned by the BBC. So what happened? Well, a bunch of audio rebels climbed into a boat, sailed into international waters, and created a radio station and played the music that wasn't allowed to be played. They built their own transmitters, running off of car batteries, and rewrote the rules of broadcasting, or at least broke the rules of broadcasting. But the law finally caught up with them in 1967 because it's so important to throw resources at people broadcasting music that people want to hear. Anyway, pirate radio moved from water to land. Through the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, pirate radio continued to be a thing. Now they were broadcasting punk, metal, reggae, all from DIY transmitters on London roofs. It was chaos, it was illegal, and it was kind of the heartbeat of British audio culture. Authorities would find amplifiers on roofs, antennas made from scaffolding, rip it down, impound the gear, and before they hit the street, somebody was up on another roof putting up another antenna. Who was that? Well, of course, it was James, as a teenager.
Get to meet The Clash, Chrissie Hynde, Sex Pistols, David Byrne.
James wasn't wearing a Sex Pistols t-shirt or have a Clash patch on his denim jacket. No, he was punk rock.
I'll sweep the floor, I'll scrub it, and I'll be on tea duty for the next 2.5 hours.
The kid who swept floors and stacked amps was breaking all sorts of laws in London at the time, because he believed people should be able to hear anything, not the pre-approved playlists from politicians. Talk about street cred. So, under Audio Partnership, Cambridge Audio moved manufacturing to China, but they designed and developed everything in London. And this wasn't the China of 2025, this was the China of 1994. James had to find people with aptitude, people who could be trained to make amps. I mean, today you can hop on a plane and with $20,000 start your own amplifier company, go to endless manufacturers, pick off of a menu and slap your badge on it, and guess what? Now you're a hi-fi company. It wasn't that way back then. Everything needed to be designed from the ground up, and the manufacturers had to be trained on how to manufacture these amps that had been designed from the ground up. Basically, Cambridge Audio was one of the first companies that built the foundation of Chinese hi-fi manufacturing as we know it today. James wanted to keep hi-fi affordable. I mean, it's not a stretch considering that he used to run from cops so that he could broadcast illegal music. It would kind of be strange if he made high-end luxury audio. And he also wanted to do things on his own terms. He dropped out of high school. It doesn't scream conformity. It screamed independence, and he wanted Cambridge to be independent. Make the stuff that he wanted at a price people could afford. Through the history of Cambridge Audio, they never stopped chasing the philosophy of making real hi-fi for real people while making innovations. From their early A-series line to the Azure series, they were making super affordable stuff. One of their amps cost less than £100, and it made its way into British dorm rooms everywhere. When streaming took over, most companies licensed software or subbed it out to another company. Not Cambridge. They wanted to keep it all in-house. And they built their own called Stream Magic, and they've continued to iterate off of it. They've been working on it for over 13 years.
I have been here for 13.5 years, I think.
Basically with one guy heading up the whole thing. They also do a blind listening test with their own internal people.
Listening panel are internal, but we are very conscious that we don't want to live in our own little echo chamber here.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously conduct thousands of listening tests here, and people have different appreciations of different types of genres of music. We know that competitor companies quite often will just have one golden ears person who will sign off what a product sounds like, whereas what we try and do here is more of a consensus. We want to produce products that sound good, whether you're listening to classical, jazz, hip-hop, dance, whatever.
The takeaway is that they don't just have one golden ear guy that tunes everything. It's kind of tuned collectively with people that have diverse musical tastes, and we will talk about that later. But one of the important things that Cambridge did was take risks with the type of products they made, like the Evo 1. And it wasn't made for two-channel audiophile zealots, put it in the comments. It was made for everybody. It looked really good, and it streamed music, and you could hook up your TV to it, and it sounded incredible. And that was a product that really pushed them forward with digital signal processing, which they would later use through Stream Magic through their streaming amps. like the Evo 150. The Evo 1 was sleek, it was modern, it was different, and dealers could not keep them in stock. And they started making wireless earbuds. I was actually watching a review of the new Apple AirPods Pro because I'm thinking about buying them. The guy was talking about how much better the noise canceling is, how much better they sound, and then he said something that was funny. He said they still don't sound as good as the Cambridge wireless earbuds. And I have to agree. Because Cambridge, well, they tune all their stuff by ear, by people that actually enjoy music. They're chasing emotional experiences elicited by the music, which is pretty cool. Cambridge has evolved. They're not just a company making hi-fi gear. They've partnered with DeLorean and other brands to do collaborations, which cross over from just the audiophile hi-fi community to pop culture. They sponsor musicians, festivals, record stores, even film projects. They were a big supporter of the Bob Dylan biopic that just came out, A Complete Unknown. Other brands sell out, other brands get bought. So how does Cambridge Audio maintain this punk rock DIY mentality?
Simon Osborne Walker, I'm head of global PR at Cambridge Audio. Yeah, and then we've got the our Music Moments wall at the back of the office here. So each of these album covers represents a member of staff. So when someone starts at Cambridge Audio, they have to give what we call a music moment. So it's something, it's part of, specifically a part of a song that means something to them.
Cambridge Audio is one of the few companies left that is truly financially independent. That means their product decisions aren't made by accountants or quarterly reports. They're made by people who actually love music. They don't have to chase whatever is the most profitable or whatever is in style at the moment. And everything is done in-house, from their software development to how they tune their products, by people that have been with the company for decades. When I visited Cambridge in January, I sat down with Hannah, and she is a young PR person. And I kind of got a gist of what the company was like because we started talking about music, specifically Sum 41, which was making music before she was born. And she knew about him. She knew a ton about music and has impeccable taste. And that's basically what everybody at the company is like. They're music fans first. In their headquarters, they have a wall of records, and each record represents an employee, and it represents an important musical moment in that employee's life. They even put it in their email signatures. It's not just branding, it's their identity. And that's what I think sets them apart. The rebellion that created Cambridge Audio as we know it is still alive in every amp, in every engineer, in every PR person, and every design choice they make. Because the culture is built at the top, and when the culture is built on pirate radio, a little punk rock from a high school dropout, well, I think things are gonna turn out all right. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you check out my video I just did about the history of Yamaha and the history of Nakamichi. Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, share it to a friend, and I thank you so much for watching.